Hello, and welcome to No Place Like Home with Mike and Megan North, where we believe the center of the universe is your home, and our home, and every other home on the planet. On this podcast, we talk about anything related to that. Homeschooling, parenting, gardening, really anything, as long as it has to do with being home.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about disciplining your children.
Yikes.
Whoa.
Terrifying.
That sounds heavy.
Yep. Well, there's two terrifying things going on. We're talking about that, which makes us sweat a little. And then our air conditioning is broken, which makes us sweat a lot. And we do have a fan, and we have like a portable AC unit, but we can't have those on while we're recording a podcast. So
just know that we are sacrificing a lot for this, everybody.
That towards the end of this, we might sound like we're getting hotter and hotter.
If you hear a dripping sound, that's my sweat.
Like hitting the microphone.
My nose on the microphone.
That's probably true. It's been really brutal. Like, we haven't had AC, like a working AC, for over a month now upstairs. Because, we're blessed enough to have one upstairs and downstairs. Uh-huh. We did not have that as when I was kids. Did you?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
It was all the same.
But it's been almost, I swear it's been like 6 weeks. Is that right?
It's been over a month now.
And luckily we live in a mild enough climate that for a lot of that time we could put fans in the windows because it was getting into the 60s at night. It was pretty miserable still. Yeah. Because it takes a long time.
We had to sleep downstairs for a while.
Yes. For an 85 degree room with a fan in the window, it takes till 7 a.m. to finally be cool enough. Yeah. But
then you go to bed.
And then you when you go to the bathroom in the morning, because you close the bathroom door and it's not getting any cool air, you whoa.
It's a real swamp.
It's like you're totally walking into the Amazon. Or when you go to the museum and they have like a, what are those called? Like an Amazon exhibit or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? It feels like that you walk into
terrarium,
that room. A terrarium.
Room.
Yeah, what are those called at the zoo? But
I don't know what zoo names are.
That's what it feels like at our house. And finally our when it continued to not get fixed, we're renting this house, and so our rental company was sending people out, and they'd be like, it's fixed. And like we believe the first time, but it's been 4 times now.
I think we've had 3 or 4 different visits.
Yeah, then you're like, no, it's not.
And they keep on doing stuff.
No, it's not. It's not fixed. I know it's not fixed.
So they're finally going to replace the outside unit, which is super duper awesome.
Yeah, every time they left, they'd be like, no, it's going to take a while to cool down, but it'll get there. And
they
then
always say that. And you're like, does it take 24 hours?
Yeah, because you're looking at it and you're looking at it. You're like, it's still in the 80s. I don't think it's working. And then you have to start the process all over. But
and then you feel like a complainer.
Like a week ago, they gave us 2 portable AC units.
Yeah. So at least our room and the girls' room can be somewhat bearable at night.
Yeah, and the other ones.
The boys, so Peter and Asher and then even Jude, have to fend for themselves. It's like you can sleep down on the couch, or if you want to put a fan in the window. It was like a lottery, but it was actually a rigged lottery where we knew exactly who was going to get them. I'm not sure why Esther and Pearl won out for that. Except they have more stuff, so it's harder for them to move.
Well, and they are Pearl works in her room a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Not just sleeps. And then I was also concerned because you're not allowed to have window units in our neighborhood.
Oh, right.
And their bedrooms face the street that there would be some complaints.
Yeah, we get in trouble.
We already look redneck enough.
We've gotten in trouble with the HOA a couple of times now. So
yes, so they're watching us. What are you going to do next? Hey, I know what that's like. And that relates to today's podcast. Sometimes your kids have a little bit of mom watching them a little more closely.
Right.
But
like a hawk.
So you're like, hey, put your legs down, put your legs under the table, put your napkin on your lap.
With the mouth closed.
Yeah. And they're like, can you just get off my back, lady?
Maybe can you just get off my back a little bit on this one?
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about discipline. We were asked by more than one person to address this topic, which is a terrifying thing to address in today's climate. Yeah. But it's actually the reason I wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I watched a video from TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but there are people out there who will share.
I'm on TikTok. I'll give you my handle later. I have my own TikTok channel.
He's on there all the time.
Totally.
That's a joke. He's not on TikTok, but people will share the craziest of TikTok or whatever, sometimes the funniest.
Yes.
But I saw a parenting video on there where a woman explained her parenting philosophy. And not only did I not agree with it, but I actually believe that it is the worst parenting advice you could ever give someone. And if it were followed, her kids are younger. Her oldest is like 7. It will destroy your family. Like, that's how strong I feel about it. Like, if you really parent like that, you are in for a load of trouble and heartache.
Yeah, so not only is it bad advice, but it's actually harmful advice is what she was giving.
Yeah, and I was like...
In our estimation.
And then the person that was sharing it on their YouTube channel, they commentated and said, it's actually Matt Walsh. I'm just going to say it.
Yep.
He was sharing this video and he's like, listen, I don't want any parenting advice unless you can meet these criteria. 1, none of your children are in jail.
Yeah, how many of your children are in jail?
It was kind of, that's tongue in cheek. Obviously, really good parents still have kids end up in jail. So if your kid's in jail.
For all you people out there, I'm sorry. Kids,
no, but
they
he
can
was
still
kind of
make their own
joking there.
decisions.
But he also said, you have to have more than 1 or 2 children. And you have to have been doing it for at least a decade.
Right.
Because who knows if it's working.
The question is how many kids you have and then how long you've been doing it.
Yeah. And so you may be wondering what her advice was. And I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember that essentially it was, I chose to bring children into this world. They didn't choose to be brought into this world. So I let them raise themselves essentially.
Yeah, I don't give them any real guidance. I don't have any rules they have to live by.
I'll give them some light advice. But
right.
If I ask my daughter, hey, would it be okay for you to go clean your room? And she says, no, Mom, I don't want to clean my room right now. I say, okay. And the idea is I'm teaching her responsibility for herself and her things and time management. And I was like, that is the craziest home. You are in for a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
A lot of trouble.
That might not be too bad when they're young, but over time it's going to snowball.
And so we're going to get into that today. And
that permissive parenting.
Yeah, we're going to talk about really how that is a really popular idea. And we're going to kind of dismantle that a little bit, talk about where it came from, and talk about maybe how we follow a different way of parenting and how we feel like that's created a lot of happiness in our home.
Sure, yeah. And
maybe give some examples. So sorry, kids. Here, Elijah, we're going to make all the examples about you.
Right. All the times Elijah has misbehaved and how we've handled it.
Well, if you guys didn't know, Elijah, our oldest, is the editor of this podcast.
We need to thank him at the end of every podcast.
I'll just do it right now. Thanks, Elijah.
Good job. And someone asked on the YouTube channel.
On the YouTubes?
The YouTubes. We do pay Elijah for his services, by the way. Oh, yeah. We don't, he's not like some slave to us. That he has to do that. And we actually
pay market rate, I think.
Yeah.
We pay him pretty well.
We pay him a good rate. So he's getting paid. Don't worry.
Don't you? Yeah, it's that, I don't know.
That would be really mean.
People have the craziest questions. Yeah. We had children so they could work for us. That's what we did. There's a funny, famous story in our family.
That's partially true.
Yeah.
Kids can be assets too.
Oh, totally. And were in the past, especially. But we had we were having a family council or meeting. And
this was a long time ago.
Probably 5 years ago and maybe longer.
More.
And I started the meeting with, now, why do you guys think Dad and I have chosen to homeschool you? And Esther was like, so we can do the chores.
And we're like, yes, you got it.
Yes, we keep you home from school so you can keep this house clean.
Winner.
It's actually, that's dumb because the house wouldn't get messy if you were gone all day.
We wouldn't need these chores to be done all day if you were out of here.
But that'd be great. I was like, what? And we laughed pretty hard and we still laugh about that. But
that was during a time when Esther was pretty certain that, we were just making them they were our little servants to do everything. She felt pretty bad about it, but
yeah,
anyways.
That was the times when she was meticulously going over the chore chart to make sure that
everything
it was completely fair.
Completely fair.
But,
so
every child goes through that probably, but
it's fine.
So, man, I'm nervous, Mike.
Well, this is kind of a scary thing because parenting is sort of a hot topic, and how you parent and how you raise your children is become controversial.
When you're even supposed to kind of pretend you don't even know.
Oh, you mean you're not going to take a strong position on
it? Even if you have figured some things out at home, it's that's just my house. I don't know if it's a universal principle.
No.
Where everything is supposed to be like this, that now, where
you can't
you're not declaring anything as true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's my truth.
Right.
But
we have pretty strong.
But when the microphone's not on, I don't.
No, we don't
abide by
talk that way. So I think we just have to be fairly honest about it and forward about it because it's true. This sort of permissive parenting has kind of taken over.
It's destroying our country.
And I really do feel like it's hurting.
Yeah.
And I think it's a couple of generations of it now, and we're seeing some of the results of it.
One family at a time. It's really tragic, and so also,
yeah, there's definitely a lack of discipline.
And when I was a young mom, I read some books, and like I said before, Mike studied marriage, family, and human development and at BYU, and so we got books from there. And then I was like blown away at how much books could help us.
Right, yeah.
And so I just continued. I've read a lot of books on parenting, and I early on read one that kind of encouraged that we have a home of respect and discipline.
Right.
And kind of talked about when that was important, when it wasn't. I'm being kind of evasive because it's not a book that I think would make, I'm just going to say, it's called The New Dare to Discipline. I just opened it up. I haven't cracked it open for 15 years.
Yep.
And there's definitely some things in there where I'm like, I don't know about that. You know, it's definitely, so I'm not necessarily recommending you go get it.
Endorsing
because my only takeaway from it was that you don't punish like a 4-year-old for acting like a 4-year-old, you know, where they're trying to pour the milk.
Right.
And it spills because they're not strong enough and they didn't think about the velocity of the milk coming out of that full milk jug.
We've all seen that.
You just, at that point, you're, you know, like, oh, let me help you with that. Like, hey, now you know.
Right.
But you definitely discipline when that 4-year-old is talking back to you.
Right.
And not and disrespecting you.
Right.
And so that was my biggest takeaway from the book. Like that's when
discipline,
you fire on all cylinders right there with discipline. And so I read that when Elijah was pretty young. In fact, I think the book said I bought it in like 2000. Let me see.
Oh, it does it. It's right here.
Yeah. I just, you know, it's interesting sake. 2004. So Elijah was 3.
When you had this book?
When I bought this book. He wasn't even 3 yet. It was in March. Right?
Because Elijah
and there was a lot of ideas out there.
A little defiant sometimes.
Remember? Well, and there was a lot of ideas out there on how you should deal with your kids. And, you know, and he was very, very strong-willed. You were very strong-willed, Elijah.
That hasn't changed.
And so obviously I was seeking the solace of this book. But I started implementing these ideas about requiring respect. And
so I think to me, this is like the baseline. Mm-hmm. This is like the foundation of parenting.
And we're going to get to a book that really explores that idea really well. And I do recommend getting. But at that point when I started to implement it, I definitely had moments where I felt like my friends, even my closest friends, thought I was mean.
Right.
Like because I'd be like, excuse me, do not talk to me that way.
Right.
Like even in front of them, my closest friends, I'm not like doing that like everywhere, but like there was never a time when I allowed my children to disrespect me, even if we were in like at the pool.
Right.
Like I would pull them aside.
Sure. Like
I already explained this to you. We're not doing it. That's not appropriate. You know, that sort of thing.
And if it happens again, they're like, we're actually going to do something about it.
But it was like I actually did not give them even an inch. Maybe at the very beginning when I was a little nervous about it.
Yeah.
But of disrespect. And I didn't disrespect them, right? And I'm saying this because I was uncomfortable. I was gambling because I didn't really know anybody in my modern circle of friends that was doing that.
Right.
It didn't seem to be.
Right.
And so I was like, am I mean? I'm like, but it makes sense to me. Like the book had really convinced me of this.
Right.
And so I went out on a limb and I did it. And so I want you to know that I know that for all the young moms out there and dads, I know, or grandparents, because I think I'm going to be this type of grandparent too. I know that it's counterculture. It is. It is a little bit radical.
The popular culture does not support this.
Yeah, but also heartbreakingly, it has borne out. You know, now I have adult children and my friends have adult children, and it's like clockwork. Mm. Every prophecy, I guess in quotes, that this book made, or promise of like, if you parent like this, then this is what's going to happen, has come to pass for my friends. Yeah. That parented, and this is like there's a gamut, right? It's not like some people, it's not black and white. Either you did this or you didn't. But like people who had a family built on respect and authority fared.
And respect both directions.
Yes, but not equally, clear. Right? And so the next book that I discovered is called The Collapse of Parenting. How We Hurt Our Kids When We Treat Them Like Grown-ups.
Right.
And this, by Leonard Sachs.
Huge one.
This book is so convincing. It lays it out with all the data. It gives so many examples, real life like scenarios that you will find yourself in as a parent.
Right.
And it is incredibly helpful. And it's like so important. It's like we have a tsunami of like descending on families, or that is telling them that it's...
there's so many voices. So many voices
everywhere you look.
The opposite.
It's actually the culture of schools. It's the culture of universities is in opposition to this principle, which is so important for a healthy family. And so now...
Which is essentially that parents aren't being parents. The kids are in charge.
Parenting has collapsed. And I'm going to quote a lot from his book, so I hope that's okay. But
no, I will not accept that.
So often on our YouTube channel and in public, people will talk about how we have the nicest kids.
Right.
Or like if they go to some like event with a bunch of other adults, they're like, your kids were so nice and so polite. And like, and I think there's this new idea that the reason they're nice is because we're so nice.
Because we are super like whatever you want to do.
Touchy-feely nice. Or like we never say no.
Right.
We always say, well, what would you like to do? And it's like in reality, the reason they're so nice is because we're really strict on respect and authority. And you think like there's how many movies, how many narratives around the idea of like the overbearing parent. Now, I'm not saying that there's some not overbearing parents out there, but that's not a culture of respect.
Yeah.
That's a culture of like tyranny where the parent demands that you respect them without earning it and without respecting you as an individual as well. But
we've kind of, that's that benevolent monarchy that we've referred to before. That is a mutual respect. And like you said, it's not the same level of respect, but it is respect for the child, as well as an expectation of respect for you, the parent, and not accepting less.
Totally. And Dr. Sachs talks about how we got here. And he's usually also another researcher named Dr. Neufeld. I don't know. But he talks about how when, in the 20th century in Western cultures, we had the dismantling of like structures of power.
Okay.
And those were really important. I mean, you think about it, like any remaining like tyrannical governments, not any, but many of them were brought down.
Okay.
A lot of monarchies were dismantled.
Right.
The power differentials in so many ways were, we had the civil rights movement, all of these things that are really important.
Right.
And so we all started believing in like equality and really
kind of taking down the man, as it were.
Authority. We pushed back against authority. He said, throughout the 20th century, the legitimacy of almost every kind of authority became suspect throughout Western Europe and North America. And then he says, but what is true for adults in their relations with other adults may not be true for parents in their relations with children.
Right.
And he says, the first job of a parent is to teach culture to the child, and authoritative teaching requires authority.
Right.
And so like the woman in that video saying like, hey, they didn't ask to be born into this world, so I can't like push that on them. Like she's all, like she's all wise and giving.
Right.
Which is insane.
Right.
Like children.
You are shirking your duty.
Yeah. Children come into this world knowing
they don't
nothing.
Know.
Like if you let your children do what they want, they will poop their pants all their life.
Right. They will.
You have to teach
like
them.
The list is endless of things.
You have to teach them not. I mean, like really, like kids stick their hands in a poopy diaper and like get it all over their fingers, and we'll put it in their mouth and wipe it on the walls. Like we all potty train our children. We know that's our job to say like, okay, you've done the diaper thing, but now that you're mature enough.
Yep, we're going to move on to something
But
better.
you know what? In this crazy world, there's probably people out there who think potty training is wrong. So for those of you who still believe in potty training.
For you, a minority out there who still think your kids shouldn't wear diapers until they're 10 or 11.
Yeah. And it is your job to teach them the culture, teach them right and wrong, and teach them like how to get in control of themselves,
right?
Self-control. And he lays this out really beautifully and explicitly in the book. I really highly recommend it. It will save your family in so many ways, so much heartache.
Right.
But he gave a really great example of like a family deciding to go on vacation, and they have this like 12-year-old daughter, and they're going to go skiing, and they gave her the option whether she wanted to go on their ski vacation or stay home at a friend's house. Right. And the parents went on the ski vacation by themselves, and their daughter spent 4 days at home with her best friend.
Okay. And
they said, I don't mind. In fact, I was pleased that Courtney could be so independent. That's the name of the daughter.
Okay.
And Megan is the name of the mom, not me. I don't have a daughter named Courtney. So
okay.
Yeah. It says, but Megan is mistaken. Courtney isn't independent. No 12-year-old truly is. Instead, Courtney has transferred her natural dependence from her parents, where it should be, to her same age peers, where it shouldn't be.
Right.
Courtney's top priorities now lie in pleasing her friends, being liked by her friends, being accepted by same age peers. Her parents have become an afterthought, a means to other ends.
Right.
And he talks a lot about how we have a culture that is obsessed with youth. Uh-huh. Like even that we all want to look young, which we talked about on the last podcast.
That's true.
But and he talks about when a culture values youth over maturity, the authority of parents is undermined. And so then,
because you see maturity or age as a bad thing.
Because now thing. It's called boomers.
Yeah,
which really should be the wisest people in our culture.
Yep.
Who've been through it all, who've been through a lot.
Yep.
But okay, boomer.
Right.
I mean, it's terrible, just terrible.
Sure.
And everybody's going to be a boomer someday. So watch it.
Watch out. We all grow up.
Yeah, and he talks about how he can see how loving parents might fall into this trap because you love your child and it's natural to want to please someone you love.
Yeah. And
that's kind of what this woman in the TikTok that I'm going to keep referring to as the worst parent on the planet. Right. Just FYI. No, I'm just kidding.
You win the award.
Luckily, I can't specifically address, and it's just lost in the sea of TikTok. So, but it's that you feel like, what's the big deal? I'm teaching her independence. I'm teaching her how to make choices, but you're losing authority. And I will add that while you might like to think that you are being sacrificial for your child, I actually think it's kind of selfish.
Right.
Because the reason this woman on the TikTok is doing this is because it makes her feel good.
Right.
The mom. Because it's uncomfortable to be the bad guy.
Yeah, it is.
And so she gets to be the good guy. And I'm such a cool parent.
Right.
I'm so chill. I'm just here for you, buddy.
Yeah. Whatever you want.
But I'm never going to get really mad or require anything of you because, hey, that's not my job. I'm not the man.
Right.
Which is so incredibly selfish.
Right.
Because it's for her. It's not for her daughter. It does not serve her daughter that she's not teaching her daughter self-control, responsibility, duty.
For actions.
Yeah, like all sorts of things that are really important for a healthy life.
Uh-huh.
So that she can feel like, I'm cool, I'm nice.
Right.
This type of parenting,
it pets her own ego.
It does. And it makes you feel really good. But yet you keep getting confused. It's like, I'm being so nice.
Why are you still walking all over me?
Why are you walking all over me?
Why are you doing bad things? So it's kind of one of those things where they don't want to do the hard thing now, which
makes them feel good.
But
because it does. It feels kind of crappy.
No,
your child will say mean things to you and say you're mean and controlling.
Right. To put your foot down and to kind of deal with that, with the ramifications of saying no and holding your ground, because there's a possibility the child could have a meltdown or could do something, that's unpleasant.
And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe I'm not right. I don't know.
Maybe I'm just being mean or I'm tired.
But so you try to avoid that now, but later you pay the price. Control.
Yeah.
And the bill comes due.
Yeah.
Eventually.
There's a study that he talks about from Neufeld. And Neufeld remarked after doing this, he said, for the first time in history, young people are turning for instruction, modeling, and guidance, not to mothers, fathers, teachers, and other responsible adults, but to people whom nature never intended to place in a parenting role, their own peers. Children are being brought up by immature persons who cannot possibly guide them to maturity. They are being brought up by each other.
Right. Like Lord of the Flies.
Oh my gosh, but like the crazy thing is This is like pre-social media.
Yeah. When was this written?
I don't know when his study was, but this book came out in 2016, and like we hadn't even. I mean, it's just exploded since then.
Yeah.
And I mean, TikTok. It's funny. It started just a few years ago, and it's like full of like dance videos and like funny dog videos. But if you don't know, TikTok is now full of like doctrines.
Yeah, preaching.
Of like it's like preaching. People explaining to you so many ideas, and so like it's like if you took your child to a building where you let random people from from 12 to 92
right.
go in a room with them and preach to them their philosophy on everything. And you don't know what they said to them. You don't know like who they are and what their background is.
Yeah, right.
What their intentions are, what their motivations are. And yet you just keep doing it for hours every day.
Yeah.
Hours. That's TikTok, which is insane.
So we suggest you get your children off TikTok.
I do. Now Elijah's on
on
TikTok, but whatever.
He's an adult.
Yeah.
If you're on TikTok as an adult, be careful what's being preached to you, because really it's just preaching is what it comes down to. So it's
and the thing is crazy is you don't know if that's true. Like I just was watching a thing yesterday about one of the things on TikTok is like people faking psychological disorders. That's like the cool thing now.
Yeah.
And,
Dissociative.
all sorts of things. One girl has if you just look up DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, like it has like billions of views, that hashtag.
Crazy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of it on there. And that's like already kind of a shaky like diagnosis. Not even sure if it's real.
You're right.
But there's people who have Tourette's on there supposedly to like show you their Tourette's. And there was this girl who had tons of views, and she was like showing you how Tourette's works in her life. And it's almost like watching like Robin Williams be silly back in the day, where he's just like, wee.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to believe that's Tourette's. And then it came out that like, there was like other footage of her. She doesn't have Tourette's. Her family came out and said she doesn't have Tourette's.
Right. It's an act, and it's...
So that's what I'm saying. You don't know these people.
Right.
You don't know what they believe. They might be giving parenting advice, and then if you go over their house, you're like, oh my gosh.
What a mess.
It is a total disaster over here, like complete chaos. And so you got to be really careful who you trust.
But you should trust us. That's what we're saying.
I know. But, I guess I got to trust somebody.
Yeah, if you're going to choose anybody.
But we have this culture of where we don't trust authority anymore. But they need to earn their authority a little bit.
So I don't know how long we lay the groundwork as far as whether discipline is an important thing, which is, I think, essentially what we're doing here.
I'll lay it a little bit further.
You got some more stuff in the book?
I think he talked about, and this was one of the things that I came away with. I have so many marked sentences in this book. It's incredible. It's incredibly how many sentences I have marked. No, the book is incredible. But he talks about the fallacy that you believe, and it is preached, and it's so easy to accept, that if you are kind and friendly all the time to your children, then they will love you more.
Right.
And he said the studies do not bear that out. He said the parent who puts their child's wishes first may earn only the child's contempt, not their love. Like they will not love you more. They won't respect you either. They will despise you. I think he says that somewhere else. He talked about like they will not love you. They will despise you. And you see that in American teenagers, especially. They despise their parents. That's like the culture, and people accept it. Like,
as if it has
teenagers. Oh, that's just teenagers. It's like, no, it's not. Bunk. It isn't.
I don't.
Yeah, it's not true.
Do not accept that.
It says, if you are not primarily concerned about winning your child's love and affection and focus instead of your duties as a parent, teaching your child right from wrong and communicating what it means to be a responsible man or woman, a gentleman or a lady, within the constraints of the culture you are trying to inculcate and to share, then you may find that your children loves and respects you when you're not looking for it.
Right.
You've got to do your job. And I mean, oh my gosh, we have gone to such insane levels. And the reason it's hard, and I'm hoping that you're finding some solace in this, is like people won't even declare anything as right or wrong anymore.
Right. I
was watching an interview where a guy was talking about, it's Matt Walsh, it's from his new documentary, What is a Woman? I do recommend it. But he was talking to a girl on the street, a lady on the street, and saying, obviously just me saying something is true doesn't make it true. And she's like, but it's true for you.
Right.
He's like, but it's not true. And she's like, well, it is for you. He said, okay, what if my truth is that you don't exist? And she's like, well, then that's true for you. He's like, but it obviously isn't. You do exist. You're standing right here.
Right.
And she's like, well, you just said I am, so I am. He's like, but if I didn't believe you were, she's like, well, then maybe I don't.
Yeah.
It's
that
like,
was the craziest moment.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, if we can't even, how can you parent if there is no right and wrong?
Right. It's impossible.
And also people are so afraid to declare right and wrong for their kids. But like, you have to
do that.
Have to.
Because someone is going to do that for them.
Oh yeah, they have no problem.
It's not you. Someone else is going to do it.
Yeah, other people. That's what I'm saying with this woman. She had no problem declaring how you should parent.
Right.
And saying it in a way like she was very authoritative.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and kind of smug, to be honest. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's time for those of us who are not doing that to say, wait. Here's another way of doing it.
Yeah.
And so I guess before you can move forward, you need to have a moral code.
Right.
You have to believe in something. You have to say, I have a line of this, and there it ends, a hard line between right and wrong.
Yeah.
And so you can't go along with this culture, because how can you? If someday your kid says to you, like, hey, I'm 13 and I'm going to do crack cocaine and sell my body for money tonight. Right. You say, like, no, that's wrong. And they're like, what's wrong? That's just your culture. That's the patriarchy.
Don't push that on me.
That's these antiquated ideas of right and wrong. Like, you have to take a stand. You need to choose something, some culture that you would like to inculcate them with, like you talked about, and then you have to stick with it, and you have to teach your children. And people talk about like you're indoctrinating your children. It's like, yes,
exactly.
That's my job. You have to choose a doctrine.
If I don't do it, someone else will.
Yes. Choose a doctrine and something that you are finding joy and fulfillment and importance and safety.
And is bearing good fruit for you.
Yes.
Like it's making you happy and your family happy.
You got to find that if you haven't yet as a parent. And then you have to pass that on to your children. Right. We've all accepted the doctrine that we shouldn't poop our pants. So everybody's accepted that.
I'm sure there's some
I know. We live in such a crazy world. As soon as I'm saying everybody's accepting that, it's like, ding.
Here's someone who hasn't. You can't actually make those statements anymore, sweetheart. There's nothing. Oh my gosh. There's nothing that we can all agree on.
So you got to find that, and it needs to be bearing good fruit, like Mike said. It's got to be you got to teach your children how to be safe. Mm-hmm. You got to teach them how to like respect their neighbors, like, so they don't steal and stuff, right? There's all sorts of stuff. And like, that's where, and this is really an argument for religion. Yeah. You don't have to do it. I know people have done it. It's just, you're going to have to like amass your text, your guiding text, your principles. And then you're going to have to teach those to your children, and you're going to have a why. And it is a little bit more difficult if you don't have the why being because God told us so. Like, even when we don't understand it, he's wiser than us. He knows. Right. And so we're going to follow that. And interestingly, the teenage brain is not developed fully. And really the human brain isn't developed fully until you're about 25. Right. Somewhere around that time. The last thing to develop is the frontal lobe. And in particular, your ability to understand consequences for your actions. Uh-huh. Like, that's why you can be like, what were you thinking? And they're kind of like, I wasn't. Yeah, I don't have that part of my brain yet. Fun. I knew I could get in an accident if I did that, but I didn't think I would, because they haven't connected that yet. Like, no, when you drive this way, you will get in an accident. Sure. But I heard this like on a Nova like 10 years ago, and I might have said this on our first podcast. But
Blast from the past.
I know, I loved Nova.
Does Nova still exist?
It probably does, but it's probably just all sorts of crazy stuff now.
Yeah, probably.
Believe. But man, I'm just really going for it today. I'm like blushing. But they said even though that part of your brain isn't developed, the part of your brain that like in religious morality, like morality is kind of religious. I know that some people use that word outside of it, but it's like saying there's like a moral code, like the 10 Commandments. That part of your brain is developed. And so teenagers who have a faith,
they can connect the dots with that.
They can connect the dots with that and kind of like, I don't like do these things.
We know this isn't 100%. Okay. Like
Well, especially if you don't have a culture of authority.
Sure.
It's not being taught to them, this code, right? But this is just what the scientists were saying, like that part of their brain. So like the children of faith fare better sometimes in making decisions because like nobody should be doing crack cocaine.
Right.
Right? Like
maybe we can all agree on that.
I think well-adjusted adults, oh my gosh, I'm like, maybe they don't now. Maybe they don't. There's that whole microdosing thing. But I would like to say that respectable or responsible adults know that you shouldn't do crack cocaine under any circumstances. That is harder maybe for the teenage brain, so they fall prey to something like that. But if you have a religious and moral code that it's like actually a sin.
Right, because it's bad for your body, it's bad for you,
it's
your
like,
spirit.
We don't do that, then they can make that choice and be and understand it a little bit better.
Right.
Like they understand sin better than consequence as a teenager. And some of you may be shrinking at the word sin, but a sin it's teaching someone a code that will protect them,
right,
and give them more freedom later on,
right?
Because everything that's a sin is actually just trying to help you have more freedom later on,
right? Keep you from
having
bondage,
a child out of wedlock,
all sorts of things,
going to prison, or just the regret that you might have from injuring or harming someone, from getting like into like lies, a web of lies that you've created, right. Sort of things like that. And so if you can shift your thinking, because our whole culture says like it's wrong to say anything's a sin. It's like, so wait. Are you saying that it's sinful to say something's sinful?
Yeah, no, that's a craziness.
It's like you still have a moral code.
Yeah.
You've just changed the rules. I just have a different moral code. And I do think some things are a sin, but like in a way to say like, dude, these are major pitfalls. Let's not do that. And when you do, let's try to like make that right as quickly as possible.
Right. Okay. So I think that's definitely good groundwork for discipline. And I think what we talked about at the beginning is discipline starts with respect.
And authority.
So recognizing you are the parent, you are in charge. You hold all the cards. You do not. And
you should, because those you are protecting and nurturing. Like it's back to that we talked about early on in this podcast about when you're raising tomatoes, which I am doing right now.
Very well too. Those were yummy at lunch today.
Oh my gosh.
The best.
We put a little dill on them and some ranch, like a homemade ranch. Anyways, but if I were to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to let the tomatoes do their thing. I'm going to plant them, but they didn't ask for it to be planted.
That's
true. So like, I'm going to let them do whatever.
You force that on them.
They would be covered in pest.
They would die.
They would have all sorts of problems because the tomatoes would fall over.
Right.
And they would be like rotten, pest-ridden messes.
Right.
But I don't do that. I put them in a cage.
Right.
So a structure they can lean against as they grow.
Up.
Yeah. I also trim back branches.
Uh-huh.
I'm helping it like, no. That's not a useful branch. No fruit will come from that.
Right.
I'm like watering them appropriately instead of just saying, well, whatever water comes, I guess, that's meant to be.
It rains.
You would be a terrible gardener if you used the modern parenting advice in a garden.
On your plants. Yeah. And nobody would.
So when you are having authority with your children and disciplining them when they reject that authority, then you are creating a cage for them to grow up against.
Right.
So they can bear really good fruit. Now, that being said, it's not going to be like constant, like, I am the authority. No. In fact, if you're having to do that,
something's
must
off.
not be very consistent. You must be really hypocritical.
Yeah, you may not be respecting them as well.
Or they can know that you're a joke, that sort of thing. But if you do it consistently and firmly, they get it.
Right.
I think actually you'll be surprised.
Right.
They don't question it. And like sometimes, and at certain ages, they'll start to question it more because it's natural with their development. We usually see it around 13. They start to make kind of like snide remarks and like sarcastic jokes. Like, well, don't worry, Mom. I'm sure you'll figure it out. That sort of comment. No, I do not allow that.
No.
And so it is like more like a little tiny, when a tomato plant has like a Y of branches, a little tiny one will grow in between. And that one will only sap its resources. It will never bear fruit. So and when it's really tiny, I don't have to cut it off.
You just break it off,
I just like grab it. It's like a little tiny soft thing. Boom, gone. And I go out every few days, especially in the early times, and I pull those off. So when my 13-year-old makes a joke like that, I say, hey, don't talk to me like that. That's not appropriate.
Acceptable.
Yeah.
Not acceptable.
Appropriate or acceptable.
I say acceptable. That's my word.
Okay. I do say appropriate a lot. It's funny that I never imagined, but it just happened. And I say inappropriate a lot.
Right.
But, and it doesn't take much. But if I were to let them make those sort of jokes and then be like, Mom, you're so dumb. Like, look at what you're wearing. You look like an idiot. That branch has gotten bigger and bigger until it's really difficult.
It can be done. You can come back from that, but it's going to be harder and it's going to be a little more painful.
And so you kind of create this culture. So reason why we know it can be done is because we brought home a teenage boy from China,
right,
who hadn't had parental guidance for a decade,
right,
in his life.
Yeah, Daniel did not understand. He didn't understand how to be a child and how parents operated.
Because he couldn't be.
Right.
When you're put into an orphanage, you have to fend for yourself. You are now your parent.
Right.
And so it was very difficult, and we knew it would be, for him to come back and have a parent.
Right.
It's also terrifying.
Yep.
Because the adults in your life failed you, so I don't want to get vulnerable with you.
Uh-huh.
But the culture we had created in our family, not just how we responded to him, but how him watching all of our other children respond with respect to our authority, but also then be benevolently treated and taken care of, really helped.
Yeah.
But we had to be strong. And so I'm mentioning Daniel because some of you are out there and like, oh my gosh, it's run away from me. I don't think it actually takes very long. I think you will be surprised at how I think they kind of crave it.
Yes, they do.
Even if they don't think they do.
They don't realize it.
They do. It's like Daniel and I got in an argument around a year or less after he came home, because in China he could eat candy all the ding dong day.
I love that statement.
I know. I don't know where it came from, but I say that pretty often too. All the ding dong day. He could eat candy endlessly, and he did, because they would give him a little like stipend of money.
If you could see his teeth when he came home, you'd know that.
Oh my gosh. And so they gave him a little bit of money, and he was smart. Daniel is smart, and he knew if he always had candy on him, and he shared it with his peers, like
he'd get friends. Yeah,
he'd get friends, and he wouldn't create enemies.
Right.
So that was smart of him, but it also meant he was eating candy all the time. And so we got home. We were on our RV trip at this time. If you didn't know, we traveled for a year in an RV after Daniel, and
6 months after he got home.
Yeah,
we left.
After he got home, we also brought home even Jude at that time. But and I think we'd gone somewhere, and he'd gotten a bag of candy and just like chomping down on it. And I said, hey, like you need, or maybe you did. We said like, no more candy. You're eating it constantly. This is really bad for you. And I remember sitting in the van with him. We got in. He was really mad. Kind of pouty, and he said something in his
broken English.
In his broken English, trying to learn this new language. Like, no, if you loved me, you'd let me eat candy, and when I grow up and I have kids, I will let them eat all the candy they want.
Right.
And I said, Daniel, I don't know if you understood me. I think he might have. I said, if I didn't love you, what if I wouldn't care? I don't care what happens to your teeth.
Right.
I don't care. Like when you love somebody, you say no, because in the long term, that's going to help them.
Right.
And so when you discipline your kids, you're showing them like, hey, I care what happens to you. I care like what you become. And I believe in you, that you're better than this.
Right.
And you're capable of like self-restraint. And this is not good enough. You can be more than this. And
I'm willing for you to dislike me for a while.
Yeah, because I love you that much.
Right.
Because it's actually... Really, if you don't care, you just let them do whatever. Like, see ya.
Yeah.
Go sit in your room and watch whatever crazy videos you want all day.
Right. You're definitely shirking your duties, and you're making it easier on yourself. Well, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should kind of talk about this, what this actually looks like. Okay. Because I think people are maybe wondering what we actually do and what we've done. And I think it kind of it's a kind of simple concept, which is, especially at a young age, when we see something that needs to be corrected, like we said, especially disrespect, we reprove immediately and sharply. Mm-hmm. I know this would happen all the time. If a child, Elijah, Andrew, whatever, we remove them from whatever situation they're in typically. Mm-hmm. So we take them aside and we tell them directly, that's not acceptable, don't do that. And if you do that again, there will be
and we say it sternly.
And there will be a consequence.
Hey, buddy.
No,
he talked about
we
it here.
don't say "Hey, buddy" ever.
I know a lot. He talked about how we
hey,
instead of having statements like that, we've replaced it to "How do you think that made them feel?" Which is undermining your authority. Like you're saying you're the authority. Think about it, child. Which I understand. Like that might be a conversation you have later as to a why.
Right.
But you say you never treat someone that way.
Right.
You never talk to someone that way. Like if we saw cruelty among them, like absolutely not. And we say it in that voice. Very serious. I want you to understand. This is very serious. And so here's something that it was really, I don't have toddlers anymore. So it's probably still said, but what do you do when your toddler is having a meltdown in a grocery store? Don't give him a lollipop. It's like, okay, just ignore it and the behavior will go away.
Right.
No. Because what you're teaching them is it's acceptable.
Right. To just sit here and wail.
It's like, absolutely not. And so if one of my children started having a meltdown, I picked them up very quickly, like to be like,
Yep.
Took them out of the store. Like if I would leave my cart. It didn't happen that many times, and be like, we do not act that way. It is not appropriate to act that way in public. Like people around you don't want to hear you acting like that. Like that sort of thing.
Right.
Like this is not how we behave.
Right.
And like, if you cannot get it together, we are going home right now. And the shock of it for them, like just changing locations.
Right.
I'm not like hurting them. I'm not screaming at them. I'm not shaming them. None of those things. But I'm very firmly telling them, no, we're stopping this right now.
Yeah.
Would usually be enough.
Right. So that's how we did it with toddlers or the little kids.
Yeah. We should say with toddlers.
Sometimes.
Listen, they don't have as much self-control as, even a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. It's really best to avoid getting into these because they are learning for the first time independence, right? That they're not you. Don't back them into a corner between
That's
your
true.
authority and theirs with a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
It's really hard to win.
Because
they could go
a stubborn
insane.
one. I mean, different kids are different. Because Jude at 3.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that kid.
He was pretty easy.
Elijah at 3.
Totally different.
Like, I would, when I knew he was going to want something, before he could say it, I would say, hey, you can have this, sort of thing. I wasn't perfect.
Right.
I wasn't perfect.
Well, no parent is.
But like, you learned, like, wait a second. I'm just communicating to him that he won because they can win. Freaking 3-year-olds can win, man. Because they can go berserk and you are overwhelmed, exhausted.
Especially if you have a few kids with you.
Yeah. And so they can go berserk. It's like best to not get there.
Right.
But
How do
also,
I avoid the situation in the first place?
But it's not over at 3, right? If you let them win at 3, you will have more chances to like say, you know what? I know we did that last week. We're not going to do that. And really, like sometimes when I would lose, let's say it was like at a pool or a grocery store or a church, before we went to that event the next time, I'd say, hey, last time we went there and you did this, that is not going to happen today.
Right.
That is not appropriate. And if that happens, this is what the consequence will be.
Right.
And it's not going to be like, you won't get a treat.
Right.
Like, that's not good.
No,
They're like, I don't care about the treat that much.
Care.
It's like, we will leave immediately. Yep. And I don't care if it embarrasses you. I don't care. Like if I'm in the middle of eating a sandwich, we're leaving.
Right.
And that usually worked. Because, when you get in that, if you have a stubborn 3 to 5-year-old man, that's like some insanity.
I know that can be crazy and definitely difficult. So that can be.
It's like, okay, we're going to circle back to that one.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen again. I failed. I failed to not see it coming.
Right. So you kind of learn.
I lost that one, but I'm not going to lose the next one.
You got to be strategic about it. So then as they grow, as they get older, that shifts to taking away privileges as your way of disciplining. Because we all know as children get older, they get more, you have more things. You have more freedom to be going out with friends or having a phone or having video games or whatever. And so our disciplining, again, we demand respect. And so a lot of times it's just hey, that's not acceptable to talk that way. And they recognize it. However, if there's real disobedience or subterfuge, like they have lied or whatever, we take things away. So sorry, you're not driving the car anymore. or sorry, give me your phone. You're done.
Yeah. And I think,
I think a lot of parents are afraid to do that sort of thing because they don't want to be the bad guy. We've gone over that. And maybe that's where it ends. I don't know. I'm not sure why people are afraid of that. And they're like,
they will get so mad. I'm afraid this will happen. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to get mad. You're right.
Yeah, they're going to get mad. Of course
and
they're going to
see how mad do they have to get before they get back.
They're pushing to see how I can win here.
And it's not evil. It's just the way their brain works. And also the way you've taught them.
Right.
And
if they've already learned that if I throw a tantrum in quotes, if I'm as a teenager even, then mom will back down and I will eventually get my way, or she will shift and the punishment will become less because I complained.
Yeah. And so for teenagers that are in that spot, I think so let's say you took away their phone and they're like, I'm afraid they'll run away. It's like, well, I guess you can make them sleep on your bedroom floor if you're really afraid of that. Like, we're not messing around. We are not messing around.
There are options.
Or you're like, I'm afraid they'll sneak out. It's like, go on Amazon and get a $25 camera system. It's really simple. And then like, oh, how could I? It's like, because you care that much.
Yeah, because
you are protecting them from their own stupidity.
Yeah.
Because you love them. And you're like, I don't care if you feel like you live in a prison. Someday you'll know that it was actually a fortress.
Well, yeah, I'm helping you avoid living in an actual prison when you're an adult.
Yes, because let's say you go out that night, you're drunk,
right?
You assault someone, or somebody accuses you of going. Like, let's say you had a son and he's out drinking that night, and a girl says, "I didn't give him consent." Right. Now your son's a sex offender,
right?
Because he's stupid and he's drinking. And drinking's not like you only do what you want when you're drunk.
Right.
Like you are not in control. You don't, like I think Jordan Peterson talked about, like you don't actually operate on your own moral code when you're drunk.
No.
You don't.
It's out the window.
People think that though. But like I wouldn't do anything that I don't think is right. It's like, yes, you would.
You're completely incapable. Yes, you would. Handicapped in that way.
And so I am protecting, because then you want to go around being a sex offender for the rest of your life. Like I'm not saying that's what's going to happen every time, but they might get into an accident.
There's a myriad of things.
There's so many things. Like think about all these boys in that current case with the hazing they did.
Right.
Like their lives are ruined. And if their parents had told them younger, like you're not drinking, and there's no such thing as drinking responsibly as a teenager.
Right.
Like we're not doing this. Like all sorts of heartache would be avoided now.
Right.
Because there's a dead boy, and then there's like 50 boys who are maybe facing jail time and shame. Like, dude, there's so many things like that like by saying our home is a fortress where I protect you.
We are protecting you from these things.
You're willing to do that. But then second, you're explicit in your explanation of it. Like, let me explain this to you. And they may be rolling their eyes and barely listening, but they're going to sit there and say, when you act responsibly, I know that you're ready for that sort of freedom. Right. But when you did this, I recognized, oops, maybe we let you have that responsibility a little too early and you weren't ready for it. And so we're taking that back and we're actually going to roll it back because we're not sure where this kind of went off the rails. Right. So you've lost that too. And then we're going to kind of, as we start to earn some respect and I see some consistency, this is not 2 days of you telling me you're better. Or 2 weeks that telling me that's not going to happen. I'm totally different now. Right. We're going to take it real slow in handing back your freedoms. Right. Because another thing that, we're getting into teenagers a lot here, but. Well,
because I think a lot of people feel like if I didn't do these things when they were little, that now it's over. Like I can't reel this back in.
Yeah.
But you can.
The other thing is.
Like we said with Daniel.
Children
we did
lie.
That.
I try not to give my children the opportunity to lie. Right. Because then what? Like it's really hard to make them feel respected if they said something explicitly and I'm like, well, I think you're lying. Right. I will do it. They made a
statement,
But it's better to just say, okay, I know that this is what's happening and I'm pretty certain that you're not ready for this yet. Or like, hey, I know that you've been using your phone this way or whatever. I don't ask them, hey, have you been using your phone this way? Especially if I do know. Right. Sometimes I gamble a little bit.
And because you can assume
I make some assumptions like, hey, I think that something's going on. Right. And I want you to tell me about that. Instead of, is something going on? I say, I think something's going on. I can tell. and I'd like you to tell me. And I think it would probably make you feel better if you told me.
Right.
Because then we could actually deal with it. But so we address it very directly all the time. And then we tell them very directly why and what we're trying to protect them from, what we're trying to urge them into or help them grow into, why we've caged the tomatoes.
Right.
Why that structure is important for them.
Yeah.
They may act like they're not listening, but they are.
And they may be crying and they may be not
raging.
Yeah, they may not be happy.
Yeah.
But things start to sink in.
Yeah, and this is not a common occurrence at our home.
No, but we have dealt with it. So people should know that we are not, this isn't just theories we're throwing out here. We have had situations where we have had to do some serious disciplining of our teenagers and our
the course.
Younger children.
But I'm saying, because people are like, oh, I don't know if it's worth it. This is like constant, like pushing.
Well, that's the thing. It's not.
It's not. Once you establish this culture and you reestablish your authority.
Yep. As the parent,
then it gets better. Now, something that, as I was glancing back through the collapse of parenting that I'd forgotten, he talked about another reason that ski trip thing was a really bad idea is because part of establishing authority in a family is fun.
Right.
Is like, I give you good benefits.
Right.
As your parent.
There's
now, obviously that
here.
can be used in weird ways, but she needed to have bonding moments with her family.
Right.
And so another problem is if you are you're sending your kids to school a day, they're having all sorts of authority from their peers and from teachers you don't really know.
Right.
Which a lot of that is coming out lately on how weird that can get. And then you're taking them to sports where they've got a coach.
Right.
And then you're taking maybe to music lessons or something else. And then summer camps and, sports camps. And there's a great quote from a Clay Christensen book when he kind of went through that. And then he says, whose children are they anyways?
Right. If they're spending so much time with other people.
You cannot have this authority with your children if you rarely see them. You need time together so they can watch you and see like that you love them and that you care about them, like we talked about with Daniel. Like he was able to see like, actually this seems to work. They seem to care about us. Like we have good times together. We're bonding. And so you have to be really, really
vacations
guarded.
are a prime time to do that. So if you let them opt out, you've lost that chance.
Yes. And you have to be really careful with how many activities you're in.
Yeah, or even just, something you're doing with the family that's not a vacation. You could say, we're going to watch a movie together. And you're like, nope.
Do I have to? And you're like, yep.
Yes, you do. Get in here.
We really do say that sometimes.
We're doing that.
Like, is this something I have to be at? Like, yeah, it is. As soon as they ask that question, then it's like, yes,
the answer is always yes.
Yes, it is. Because your loyalty is first to this group of people here.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really guarded. Now, obviously, when they're hitting like 17 or so, you do need to start to let them explore independence
well, it's not like
a little
we
bit
make
more.
our kids sit inside and always hang with the family.
I know, and it's funny the things you have to like.
This is sort of compressed, right? Yeah. There's lots of hours in the day and there's lots of time. And so we do let the kids have friends and they go and they do lots of things without us. But still, it's sort of the concept.
And that same doctor he was quoting, I can't remember his name anymore, talked about how that used to be that the outside culture helped you in these endeavors.
Right.
And you had
like the community.
Yes. But now and I think it's even worse now. You don't have that anymore. So you are on your own with very few resources to support the idea of you being the authority in the family and that what you're teaching your children is important.
Right.
Because your teachers, oh my gosh, there's been all sorts of crazy teachers saying this year that like they will keep secrets from your parents because they what they're communicating is I love you more than your parents do, which is bonkers.
That's insane.
It's like, but I won't see you after 9 months and then you'll go to another teacher, and we don't know anything about who you are, what you believe in and how well it's working in your life. But the culture tells them that too. Like we care about the government is better for you than your own parents. I mean, they want to actually put it into, they have put it into law in some places that
they have more power than the parents do.
And that parents should be out of the loop when it comes to their children because which is communicating that your parents are toxic for you. And I've seen like some of these like videos coming out of classrooms where like the teacher's like, your parents, they think this, but that's because they're dumb.
Right.
And like, blah, 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 and you're too smart for that. And it's like, oh my gosh. So it's so difficult if they're going into that culture every day for hours.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you can get them through it. Like that's why you have to remove TikTok. Right. Or a lot of the social media, right? You have to be looking at their social media and what their who the authorities are on there that are teaching your children.
Right.
You have to be aware of that. Look at your children's teachers. I don't mean just in school, though that's really important. And Mike and I, when we first started homeschooling and Elijah was going into second grade, I think is when we started homeschooling. So many, many years ago. We were like, hey, just to each his or her own. Like, we all just got to do what's best for our family.
What does that sound?
I don't know. It sounded like Jumanji, like the drums started beating.
Someone is downstairs, like hitting something with a hammer.
Oh, well, anyway, so we were doing that whole thing. Like, hey, you got to do what's best for your family. I don't know that we believe that anymore.
No, I think it's, we recommend everyone homeschool their children.
Or seek out alternative schooling choices. Because school's long. It's 8 hours.
Yep.
And then they're sleeping for 8 hours. Like it's going to be really hard for you to have equals like FaceTime with your kids as all these other teachers that you don't know. And
those kids.
Like the crazy thing is like people were proposing that classrooms might have cameras so that you can like know what they're being taught. And like teachers were so mad. You're like, why? Now I trust you even less. It's like if you're like, hey, I'm going to track where you're going. I want to be able to track you on my phone. If they get mad, it's like, well, now I know you're going places you don't want me to know about. Yeah, then we're definitely tracking you. Yeah. Because I want my child to be like, oh, yeah, totally, No
problem. So, okay. I
just want to finish that thought.
Okay.
We think you should homeschool your kids.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, really hard to teach them right and wrong when all day long they're taught there is no right and wrong, or there is, but it's like bizarro world.
Right.
And then it's going to be really hard to get them to respect you when they're told constantly by other adults even that you are not worthy of respect.
Or their peers are modeling for them, because undoubtedly there's going to be other kids who do not feel that way about their parents or disrespecting them, and then you're going to feel like you need to as well. Or your kids are going to feel that way. So it's just...
Yeah, or like that, like even
so much.
What the music they listen to, like once you've established that you're the top authority in their life, they totally get on board with that. This is not like you have to keep like they do believe that. Right. And so, remember that guy, Lil Nas or whatever? Yeah. He had some song came out and he even went and performed in like elementary schools, some like country...
Yeah, he was sort of, this...
He had this song that everybody loved and so many kids were huge fans of. And then like literally like the next big hit was like him like
something
having...
about the devil and...
Yeah, and like in the video he's like
stuff.
having relations with like Lucifer. Yeah. Relations with Lucifer. But if your child is just kind of going to grab on to any other authority, like a musician or a movie star or a sports person... And they don't have that with you, that can lead them to really weird places.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that our kids aren't fans of people, but I do think we always remind them like, hey, I don't know that guy, so just be careful. And like, I think this and this is why. But like, so that they aren't just going like a tree in a storm, just like whipping back and forth. Like they're very solidly planted and protected, so that even if they were fans of the first Lil Nas song, when the next one comes out, they're like, whoops,
never mind,
I'm out.
Yeah, and they understand that this is not the end all be all. It's just a person, and they should be treated as such. Yeah. Like they can be out like that.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to discipline itself, essentially, we believe in taking away. If you're going to be disciplining, which you should be, you can take away privileges. As for teenagers, and separate little ones,
and you don't come up with the privilege to threaten them with, like, okay, well, I was going to give you ice cream, but now you won't get it.
Right,
that's not as effective.
No, it's an actual thing you're taking away,
and like, and also, I think you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls, like we said about like by communicating your expectations.
Right,
like, hey, this time, this is how this is going to go down.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then this is the consequence. Now, listen, it's like we're saying all of these things. We do not do this perfectly, and that should give you hope because you don't have to do it perfectly. And how often we have said, like, they have a really good argument, or you're just like, what? Not really listening. And then you have to come back and say, you know what? I don't want you to do that. I changed my mind.
Oh, you mean if you gave in?
Yeah, you gave in.
And then you said, yeah, sure, you can go out tonight with
they're like,
these
but what
friends.
about this? What about this? Like, and sometimes teenagers are really good at like hitting you with all this like boom, 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 boom. And you're like, and you don't have a good argument. I think there's two things you can do there. If you lose, you can come back.
Yeah.
And say, I've changed my mind. I got some time to think about it.
And I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Thing.
Or I have said this, I am uncomfortable with this, but I need time to think about it. And they'll be bothered. Like, but why? And I'm like, I don't know why yet. I just know I need to think about this because for whatever reason, it makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
And I don't always come back and say, you can't do it.
Right.
But sometimes like when I do come back and say you can, I say, okay, you can, but the reason I was uncomfortable is this. So we need to make sure this happens.
Yeah.
And not have the knee-jerk response of always saying no too, because that's like more tyrannical, right?
Sure.
And so you're
allowed to give yourself some time to think.
Yeah.
And you can say them like, I'm not going to answer that right now. I need to think about this.
And like, yeah, I'm like doing this thing right now. I can't talk to you because they absolutely choose those times. I remember doing that to my mom when I needed to get something from school signed that, well, how bad my grade was. I would wait until I knew she was just like, what is this, Megan? And then sign it. And I'd be like, out.
Yeah. Like
I wasn't bad.
For a weak
It's just teenagers are kind of built for that.
They're like water. They find the path of least resistance. They're going to figure it out. And so you have to be willing to say, wait, nope, I can't make a decision right now. We're going to wait on that.
Yeah.
And if I did make a decision, I have every right to change that decision.
Yep. Because
I am the parent. And that's the thing. You have to take your responsibility as the parent and own that. And don't shrink from that. Because your teenagers especially, they'll try to intimidate you. They will try to push you around. But you are the parent. You don't get pushed around.
And as the firmer you are, or the more grounded you seem, the less they'll push. Because like it's like a heavy rock. Like there's no point in pushing.
They know that they can't do it over time.
Another thing I want.
Well, I want to hit on what respecting them looks like, because it's true that we're in control as parents. However, we don't call names. We don't belittle our children. Mm-mm. We are kind to them. Mm-hmm. We don't disrespect them. We don't tease them. I mean, there can be light teasing, okay? But nothing that really hurts, okay? Yeah. And it's not constant. So...
Like even, we don't call them names even if we feel like it's kind of loving.
Right.
We just have decided, and Mike, I think that came from you. Because like within like the first few weeks of us dating when we were 18, I was talking about a mutual acquaintance. And I said, like she's such a loser. And I was saying it with hyperbole.
Right.
And you said, no, she's not. She's not a loser. And I felt so embarrassed.
Oh.
I was so embarrassed, but rightly so. And I think that kind of defined our culture that we don't call people by names.
Right. So you can identify behaviors and actions that are unacceptable, but I don't call you names about it. And so I'm going to respect you as a person. And
I will say though, in this moment, you were acting like a brat.
Yeah.
I don't say it as often, but sometimes I'm like, in that moment, you were acting like this.
Right.
But you are not this.
Right.
Like, I know you're not this. I know that you can do better, but you were acting like one.
Right. So that's when we say we respect our children, that's what we mean. And that's been from a very young age. We learned that after a while, like you've got to be careful because they have to know that you love them and you respect them. However, you're going to hold your ground when we need to follow the rules.
We don't mean we respect them like we think they can parent themselves.
No. So we don't give them, because that is unkind to place that type of responsibility on your child. They're not capable of acting like an adult.
Yeah. So let's just say it. It is totally inappropriate to ask your child what gender they think they are. Because who the heck, that's what I'm talking about. They don't know what a gender is. They barely know what an elephant is or like what.
Especially if they're homeschooled.
I mean, they don't know anything in this world. They're like, hey, that's your job. You're supposed to teach me what gender I am.
Right.
And teach me what the expectations are. So like, this is the levels this breakdown of parental authority has gotten to, where like people will say their baby communicated that she was a different gender.
Right.
It's like, your baby doesn't know what gender is. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, your baby doesn't know what gender is. You need to teach your baby what gender is and what gender they are. And that's and they will thank you for it. And so when Elijah was like 5, we were in Walmart and we were going around the clothing section, and all the girls' shirts had sequins on them and were so exciting. And all the boys' shirts were like striped.
Yep,
and if you were lucky,
boring.
had like a dinosaur on them. And
Right.
he like looked over there, and Elijah, you may chuckle at this. He likes to be, he likes fashion.
Kind of showy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he looked over and he said, I want those. And I really did have a moment where I thought, hey, who am I to say? Maybe I should just let him get one of those pink shirts with sparkles on it. And then I was kind of nervous. And I said, nope, those are for girls. And he was like, oh, okay. That's it.
Yep.
I communicated to him in that moment. I taught him. I showed him what the culture was and what was right and wrong.
Right.
Because he's a boy. And like, that's just not what boys do. That's a girl shirt.
Right.
And I want to wear a dress. Sorry, you can't. You're a boy. Okay. And I want to end with this because we could keep talking about this, and you guys can send in more questions if you feel like we didn't really explain something very well. I'm sure that's totally possible. But we also have another term that gets thrown around all the time, and it's called shame culture.
Right.
And like, oh, you don't want to shame your child ever. Shame is so bad. And I believe that to a certain degree. Like, we don't call our children names. We
Right.
never say, you are bad.
Right.
We will point out a behavior. But there are times when you should feel ashamed of yourself. That is a motivator.
Right.
And obviously there's all sorts of ideas about shame that lead people to really dark places. But that just because the extreme of something is really bad.
Just because it exists.
Doesn't mean that, I mean, obviously, if you caged up your tomato plant too much, it would die.
Right.
Or if you gave it too much water, it would die. If, like things in extreme are wrong, but that doesn't mean water is bad or a cage is bad.
Yeah.
And you should let your child sit with the fact that they did something sometimes instead of being like, hey, buddy, I know you didn't mean to.
They may have meant to do that.
Yeah, they may have meant to do it.
And they should know that was wrong, and they shouldn't do that.
You do not. You're communicating this softness to your child, which just makes your child believe they are not capable of good behavior, that they're too weak or something.
Right.
And
we
so
accept better than that.
Yeah, we expect better and we demand it because you can do it. And so interestingly, we have some kids with physical challenges. And back in the day, I mean, when I was a teenager, the parent or the coach who didn't accept that and said, I don't buy that, you get in there and you get it done, was like the hero of the movie.
Right.
It was about somebody overcoming, and they always had a coach or a parent.
Yeah, tough love sort of thing.
Tough love.
Right.
But now that's like so bad.
Yeah.
And it's like you are creating weak people who don't believe in themselves. When you say, no, I don't accept that. I know you can do better than that.
Do it.
You know better than that. You know you shouldn't have done that. So like, that's the other part of this is like, I totally respect you. And because I respect you, I know that you're better than this. Mm-hmm. And you can do this. When they're like, it's so hard. It's like, well, you can do hard things.
Yeah.
You didn't think you could do hard things? You can. And you're going to have to push on that idea.
You're definitely going to have to, because once again, because we're all human, we're mortals, we want to take the path of least resistance. We want to do the easier thing. And so you have to push and make your kids do things they don't want to do sometimes. I mean, really.
Yeah. And again, and they will love you for it.
Yeah. And they'll appreciate it because they will become stronger. So you're doing it for them. You're not doing it for you.
Yeah. Selfishly, you can be real soft and feel real good and then be like, whoa, what happened? Right. Well, I guess that's on them.
Yep.
Or the school system or a million other things.
So, I think that goes back to also this, like, you can do the hard thing now and be the bad guy for a while and hold your ground. And then it's easy later, because now we are not constantly correcting our children. We're not constantly kind of like punishing or whatever you want to say or disciplining, because we've done it since the beginning, and it's just this ship kind of knows where it's going.
Yeah.
And
so when we go out of town,
little corrections here and there.
Like when we go out of town, our children are very proud at how well it goes. They don't need other adults to come in, and
and things go well. But if you decide I'm going to take the easy way out early and not put up any boundaries and let my kid do whatever they want so they like me, you are going to be in a world of hurt later, and that's where you're going to feel the pain. So it's a little pain now to avoid it later for you and your child, because they will be in less pain later too if you're willing to do that.
Oh, and I mean, one other book I'll plug right before the end is How to Raise an Adult. And she talks about parents who didn't do these things. And not only are they in a world of hurt, their children often won't even speak to them anymore.
Right.
Like the relationship, people will do it because like, I don't want to destroy our relationship. It's like, oh, well.
That's going to happen.
Yeah, it's more likely to happen. And so if you don't, I mean, we're kind of saying some bold things here that obviously are not getting said on TikTok a lot of the time. Maybe you know a good TikTok stream. I doubt that really exists, but I know I'm just momming it all over the place today. Yes. But if you don't believe us, I'm pretty sure that we are definitely being radical, and we're going against the grain here. Yep. But suicide rates are up. Depression and anxiety among children and teenagers are skyrocketing. They're unhappy. Children are unhappy, and it's because they've lost authoritative parents.
Well, that's the thing. They're unhappy, but they have more freedom to do whatever the heck they want to do.
Yeah, and they're pushing it on us more than ever that if we don't do the things they said, they're going to commit suicide. And it's like, listen, kids weren't doing this 25, 35, 55, 105 years ago at the rates they're doing it now. Right. I think you've proven that your ideas sounded promising, but they don't work. Yeah, the worse they sounded good. We've tried them. It doesn't work. More kids are committing suicide than ever. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, those numbers are real. Don't bully me with that. All of these terrible things are going to happen. They're happening more than ever, and people have been doing what you're saying more than ever. So we're gonna go back. Maybe the thousands of years of parenting, where we got very traditional family roles, worked. We don't get there out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So maybe we should. I mean, not everything is great. There's some things you can improve on and that we've learned, but maybe we should look at them and say, why did we refine this machine of the family with parents being one way and children being another way to get it to the point that it was at? And why did we get it to there? And it's like, because it worked. Right. It was working. It was working. And so, I mean, I'm happy to have said these things. I don't feel scared anymore. My cheeks are still a little bit hot. Yeah. These are big declarations to make. But we've seen the fruit of this in our own family. And in the families around us. And in others. So it works. And so if you're the parent, be the parent. And so much joy will come. Own that. Your plants will bear so much fruit. Healthy, beautiful fruit. Right. And we've definitely seen that. So, and that's an analogy we use when we talk about homeschooling as well. But maybe we'll talk about that again. Yeah, we need to do a whole podcast to convince you that you should homeschool. If we haven't already. If this did it already. All right. Well, I think we'll end it there. Thanks for coming along, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, contact@norpensouth.com. And because we love it when you rate the podcast. Yeah. However, we don't see those as much. They're not in real time, and we can't really respond to that. They don't send those to us. Yeah, we have to go check on them. This isn't like a thing that we receive in our inbox. So send us a message, and we'll be happy to maybe address it here if we missed something. But I think that's it. That's it, guys. Thanks so much. Yep. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.